Welcome once again to the Ahern video podcast. Yes, it is 2014. Yes, we have an opportunity to change our destiny. Yes, we're going to continue to have challenges. Yes, hours of services can continue to impact the trucking industry's earnings. Yes, shippers are going to continue to put pressure on us for more capacity, but at the same time hold our rates. And yes. The issue really becomes is, what do you do to adjust to an economy that's constantly evolving? What do you do to stay ahead of the curve? How do you stay ahead of the curve? One of the first things you need to do is you have to understand the economic reality of our situation. The reality of the situation is trucking is directly responsible for moving today 70% of all. Therefore, I think it was the ATA came out with a 2012 analysis that said out of the $13 trillion of freight movements, $10.3 trillion was trucking. So the good news is trucking here is to stay. The bad news is it's very difficult to get drivers. And the reason is they don't want to go over the road. They don't like to be away from their families. And they're looking for other alternatives. Trucking has evolved in a lot of different ways since you and I were growing up, but at the same time, you need to constantly stay ahead of the curve. So the first thing you have to do is understand the economy. GDP is projected to be 2.3 to 2.5%. That's not a good growth rate. The question is housing going to continue to have the rebound it has? Because if it isn't, then it's going to impact trucking. Capacity is going to continue to be an issue. You read in the paper every day that small businesses are going to get an injection of working capital through the banks. The only thing I can say to that is a crock of hooey. It isn't going to happen. Unless you have a lot of assets that are unencumbered and there's no risk for the bank, they're going to continue to what they always do. Take the safe road, make huge, they can borrow at the Feds at very low rates and they can reinvest at very high rate of return. So don't plan on that. So what do you have to do? You need to get creative. You have to recognize that our unemployment rate's over 7%. You have to recognize that we're still going to have various challenges in Congress. You have to recognize that at some point in time, there is going to be that day of reckoning where we have to balance our budget. When that happens, is it going to impact the economy? Yes. Is it going to impact every American? Yes. Is it a fact of life? Yes. Is that a political statement? No. It is a fact of life. What I'm saying is that if you understand the economics of our country, if you understand the economics of the world, then you can plan your business accordingly. Starting today, plan your expenses to your profits. Starting today, do a line item expense. Take your P&L and your balance sheet and look at all the line item expenses for the last 3 years. Also look at the projected line item expenses for 2014. And wherever there were low expenses, figure out how you get there again. Is fuel going to continue to spike? Yes. So what does that mean? It means you got to find a way to offset that cost. Well, if I don't know what my costs are going to be, then how can I offset that cost? It's very simple. Look at the trends. You don't have to be Albert Einstein to know that in certain periods of the year, fuel spikes. You don't have to be an Einstein to know that when weather conditions get colder, what happens? You burn more fuel. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that in certain parts of the country, fuel spikes at different times. So find solutions to the problems. Are there co-ops available? Yes. Is that a solution to the problem? I don't know, but research it. Can you get discounts by going to various vendors? Yes. If you're a small trucking company, what can you do to survive the challenges? And there's a lot of things you can do. But the point is, you need to start taking control of the situation. You need to start recognizing that we're not where we need to be, but that doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Remember that statistic. We moved over $10.3 trillion of revenue in trucks. Nobody's going to replace us. There's going to be a lot of consolidation. But the trucking industry is not going to be replaced. The biggest obstacle we have right now is how do you create an effective driver base to sustain the growth that you need? It's a very difficult question to answer, but there's lots of variables you can look for. But one of the things, our wages are going to have to go up. That's a fact of life. Rates are going to have to go up. That's a fact of life. Cost of equipment is going up. You need to pass it on to the shippers. Little guys can't necessarily do that. The bigger guys are doing that. So if you're a little guy, how do you compete? You can do joint ventures. You can do co-ops. You can become an agent, and you can haul under somebody else's authority. It's still your company, but and yes, you're giving up some of the cash flow, but on the other hand, you're increasing your cash flow. You may get better paying rates. You may be able to eliminate 30 to 40% of your backhauls that are brokerage, and it gives you a time to build up a base. It gives you a time to increase your profitability. It gives you an opportunity to get away from that factor if you were a factor. It gives you an opportunity to multi and cross-sell your customer base if you're with a larger carrier. Doesn't mean you have to sell. You can go under an agent program or a division program, whatever you want to call it. But there are things to consider. I'm getting a lot of telephone calls from people that are saying, well, I'm too small, so I'm going to sell. Well, what are you getting for your company? Nothing. Well, that's not a sale. What someone is coming to you is they're saying, I'm going to pick up the excess capacity that you have. I'm going to make you promises that may not ever take place. But once I control your drivers and once I control your customers, I control you. And if you don't like it, I don't care. That is not an equitable plan. So whatever you do this year, do things that make you feel uncomfortable. Start stepping outside of the box. Start looking at alternatives. If you don't know what the alternatives are, go seek someone that does know the alternatives. But at the end of the day, I'm telling you that this could be a very good year for the trucking industry if you plan properly. Until next time, thank you for attending the podcast.